to him and saying, you know, there's this place and you need to come, and he just looked at me. And I'd never seen hatred in his eyes before, but he just looked at me and he said, you don't get it. You are a straight woman. This is not your disease. You're not dying. And don't tell me what the fuck to do. And he decided to move out. And I continued to go to this group. It was helping me. It was the first time in my life I was talking about life and my feelings. And one day I was walking down the street, and I was near 14th Street, and I just felt this pull into this bookshop that I'd never been in before, and it was called East West Books. And when I entered, there was like incense wafting and a few Buddhas there, and I knew I was maybe in some different kind of bookshop. And I went in, and there was one of those, you know, the ends of the rows. And I was walking by, and this book, this heavy blue book, literally fell at my feet as I walked by. And I looked down, and I looked at the title of the book, and the name of the book was A Course in Miracles. And I opened the book, and it was sort of, the first words I saw were sort of written in some kind of Judeo-Christian tone, and I'd grown up a very distant, removed Protestant, and I basically decided that God didn't exist when my grandfather died when I was 14, or if there was a God that took him in such a brutal way, I wasn't very interested. But I picked up the book and I started reading, and there were words in it like God and love and miracles. I remember that. Miracles are natural occurrences. They should happen. If they're not happening, that's when something's wrong. And it was very strange because I started to track an internal process in myself. And I realized that whereas normally I would open a book and I would be curious about the next sentence because I wouldn't know what was to come, something different was happening with this book. I wasn't learning something. I was remembering it. I knew the next sentence before it would come. It was like somewhere in some buried part of myself, I knew everything that was being said. And I noticed that. And it was amazing and strange, and I had no understanding. And I purchased the book, and I walked out of the store, and in the next 2 weeks, it was like my whole reality was turned upside down. I was thrown into this state of bliss. I would walk down the street, and I would look down, and I would see a cigarette somebody had dropped burning. And I would see the clouds of smoke wafting up. And it was so beautiful that I would have to lean against a building and stop. I remember the taste of pie in a little cafe. And it tasted so sublime. It was as I had never tasted pie before. And I had this sense, all of a sudden, of complete trust. And every turn I would make on every block in the street in the city, I would feel like something else was making that choice for me. And then I'd just end up at this perfect little bar and have a great connection with the bartender, or go get my hair cut on St. Mark's Place. I remember I was in such a place of, I didn't know the word surrender at that time, but I was in such a place of openness and surrender. I went to this little hair stylist on St. Mark's Place, and he said, "What do you want to do with your hair?" And I said, "I don't know, whatever you think." And he said, "I'm in New York City." And he said, no, really. What do you want me to do with your hair? You want bangs, short, long, medium? And I said, whatever inspires you. And he looked at me like I was crazy, but I did. I walked out with the best haircut I ever had in my life. I loved how my hair looked. And one day I was in a friend's apartment during this time, and I was very aware that her houseplants were breathing. And I could see them, and I could connect with them. Years and years later, after moving to Santa Fe, I talked to a Buddhist teacher, and he said, you know, that's the kind, I was telling him, because I haven't told many people to this day about this experience tonight, that more of you know than not, because it's like trying to tell what is unspeakable. There really aren't any words for this kind of experience, but I'm trying to tell it anyway. And a Buddhist teacher said to me, you know, people meditate for years to have that kind of experience. And then years later I was in India, and I was told that that experience of bliss and oneness is called something called samadhi, but I didn't know any of this then. And I certainly didn't work for this experience. I certainly didn't earn it. I wasn't on a zafu up at 5 a.m. meditating. It was just something that I'll never know why I got it, had it. And shortly after this time, I was sitting in the backyard of my friend Liz's little row house in Queens. And I was by myself, and a bird landed on the chain link fence. And I heard this voice in my head say, go to Santa Fe. And I thought, Santa Fe? Is that in New Mexico? And then I remember thinking, I guess they have a lot of cactus there, and it has Mexico in the name, so it must be really hot all the time. And because in my family, from the East Coast, everything off the East and West Coast were simply flyover zones. This was not a destination. But there was something in this voice that I recognized. It wasn't a voice that I was familiar with. It felt both inside of me and outside of me at the same time. But for whatever reason, because of what I'd been experiencing that night, I went into my job at the bar and I said, I'm quitting. I'm leaving for Santa Fe in a month. And everybody said, what? And everybody said, okay, go have a little adventure. We'll see you back here in a month or two. And a month later, I was in front of my apartment, giving away all my furniture and dishes to anybody passing on the street who wanted them. And I was packing up an old Buick, which I christened Beulah, that my mother gave me. And I packed my books, and I packed my clothes. And I headed out, sight unseen, with $2,000 in my pocket, across the George Washington Bridge, headed west. In my 26 year of life, I was shown that there was something much greater than all that I had known. And that was 19 years ago and 4 months. And in my way, I am following it. Thank you.